Good morning. It is the 16th of April 2014. Thank you so much for joining us. You're on Africa This Morning. I'm Beryl Ooro. Let's start the bulletin with a look at the headlines.
The Central African Republic crisis. European forces to be deployed to Central African Republic's capital Bangui at the end of April. Kenya tourism. Insecurity hurting tourism sector despite assurances from the government. Tanzania floods. 10 killed and several trapped after heavy downpour in Dar es Salaam.
At least 10 people, 5 of them children, died and many more could be trapped in flood waters following heavy rains in Dar es Salaam. Hundreds of homes have been swept away by raging water that has wreaked havoc in many parts of the country.
Hundreds of families have sought refuge with friends and relatives as rising water levels sweep away their homes. Rescue workers were under pressure to move those stranded in floods to temporary homes in police offices and schools. In parts of Dar es Salaam, transport came to a complete standstill as stormwater flooded motorways, leaving commuters stranded and services temporarily ground to a halt. A red alert by the meteorological services that the rains would continue for 2 more days sparked panic among residents who are having a hard time coming to terms with the devastating effects of the downpour. The police, in collaboration with regional authorities, have set up rescue teams to work in areas most affected by the floods. At least 5 bridges that connect Dar es Salaam and upcountry regions have been swept away. Tanzania's meteorological agency issued a red alert on Thursday and urged residents to prepare for heavy rains exceeding 50 millimeters in 24 hours, strong winds at 40 kilometers per hour, and large ocean waves reaching 2 meters. The last time Dar es Salaam experienced such floods was in 2011. At least 23 people died and 4,909 people were displaced. Dar es Salaam's Defense and Security Committee held a day-long meeting Monday to assess the damage.
The head of the European Union force says the first goal of the troops to be deployed to Bangui at the end of April will be to secure the city's airport and to fight against the enemies of the Central African Republic. The UN Security Council also authorized a 12,000-strong peacekeeping force.
Maximum vers 17h.
A 800-strong force will be deployed to the Central African Republic CAR at the end of this month to improve law and order in a country plagued by violence and looting.
La mission de cette force, c'est d'être en...
The purpose of this force is to be a support for the support mission to Central African Republic and to contribute to the improvement of security and fight against impunity, to allow at the same time people, civil authorities and humanitarian workers to conduct their activities for a return to normality in Bangui and in the rest of the country.
Head of European Union force in CAR added the mission will consist of military police from a variety of European countries, including France, England, Italy and Spain.
Dans un premier temps, donc le fort relèvera.
For the first period, EUFOR will relieve Sangaris, that is the French mission in Central African Republic, around the end of April, at the end of this month, with the goal of securing the airport, then go on to increase its power to deploy in the neighborhood and the districts that are around the neighborhood.
French forces known as Operation Sangaris and named after a local butterfly currently have 2,000 troops in the country. There are also nearly 6,000 African Union peacekeepers in CAR, but despite their presence, tit-for-tat killings have continued. One of the hurdles facing the fight against impunity is that the central prison in Bangui, though still functioning, has been affected by the crisis. The United Nations 15-member Security Council has authorized a UN force to be known as MINUSCA of up to 10,000 troops, 1,800 police and 20 corrections officers to be sent to the country. The UN operation will assume authority on September 15th from the African Union's 5,600-strong MISCA force, which was deployed in December.
From the central part to the southern part of the continent, the prosecution has completed its cross-examination of Oscar Pistorius, ending 5 emotional days of intense interrogation that raised serious doubts about the star Paralympian's version of what happened the night he shot his dead girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp. Prosecution lawyer Gary Nell spent 5 days dragging Pistorius over the coals, accusing him of lying, tailoring evidence, and crying to avoid tough questions. Here's what transpired.
An emotional day in the Oscar Pistorius trial. During cross-examination, the prosecutor goes after the South African track star's testimony.
Why are you getting emotional now? Is it about what happened, or is it about the questions and your frustration in answering them? Because now we dealt with nothing but your version. Why are you getting emotional?
The prosecutor was grilling Pistorius about details from the night he shot girlfriend Riva Steenkamp in his Pretoria home. He then accused the double amputee athlete of using emotional breakdowns to avoid answering questions.
Mr. Pistorius, you're not using your emotional state as an escape, are you?
No, my lady. If I say I can't remember how I opened the doors, I can't remember how I opened the doors.
No, you see, I cannot see how that would cause you to be emotional.
Pistorius has broken down numerous times during the 22-day trial, including vomiting into a bucket. When challenged about what he had shouted at the suspected intruders, Pistorius broke down once again.
I screamed, I said, "Get the f*** out of my house! Get the f*** out of my house!"
Pistorius maintains the killing was a tragic accident.
Abdel Fattah al-Sisi gained 8 times the number of signatures needed to register as a candidate in Egypt's presidential elections. A legal advisor of Sisi, the country's former military chief, who orchestrated the 2013 overthrow of the President Mohamed Morsi, delivered the 200,000 signatures to the Election Commission on Monday. Under Egypt's electoral law, any candidate hoping to run for president needs to collect at least 25,000 signatures. A huge poster of former army chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi stands tall near Cairo's iconic Tahrir Square, one of thousands that have sprung up across Egypt. Less than 3 weeks before the launch of official campaigning for the May 26th, 27th presidential election, supporters of Field Marshal Sisi, the odds-on favorite, are raring to go. On television, social media networks, or stands selling election merchandise, Sisi is omnipresent, with no stone unturned in unofficial campaigning. Callers to television talk shows have recited poems in honor of the clear frontrunner. Footage of pro-Sisi demonstrations and soldiers in training are all over the internet. Sisi, who retired from the military to run for election, has been riding on a wave of popularity since he toppled President Mohamed Morsi last July. Amnesty International says that since the ousting of President Mohamed Morsi, a police crackdown on supporters of the former president have left dead more than 1,400 people. In contrast to all the Sisi paraphernalia seen on the streets, there is none for his opponents, including Hamdine Sabahi, the leftist leader, seen as his nearest rival. The Sisi brand, meanwhile, has turned into a lucrative business. Video games, cakes and chocolates have been named after him, while posters of Sisi with tigers, eagles or the late charismatic President Gamal Abdel Nasser are everywhere. And back to Kenya, once one of Africa's most popular tourist destinations. For the past few years, Kenya has suffered from deteriorating security image abroad. The Kenyan government is, however, assuring visitors of their security and is currently carrying out an operation to flush out criminals.
The white sands Mombasa stretched to the horizon, with fewer and fewer tourists to obstruct the view. While Kenyans still come here to swim and relax, international tourists are an increasingly rare sight. Once one of Africa's most popular travel destinations, Kenya's image abroad has deteriorated in recent years, largely due to high-profile security scares.
Okay, there were 2 tourists who were taken from Lamu. Okay, they were taken to Somalia. So all the people thought that once you go to Kenya, then it's not a safe place to go. You might be one of the victims.
Zuma says business is just a third of what it was in better days, before the deadly post-election violence in 2007-2008 that first shook Kenya's international reputation. The Lamu Island kidnappings in 2011, last year's attack on a Nairobi shopping center, which left at least 67 dead, and waves of ongoing religious violence in Mombasa have all been a PR disaster. After agriculture, tourism is Kenya's biggest source of income, generating $4.7 billion in 2011 and employing 12% of its workforce. Tour companies say the government isn't doing enough to support this crucial sector of its economy.
Lawmakers and the government are also not really helping, and rather much to the contrary, that they are making things more difficult. We have had new taxation implemented. We saw a rise in park fees and all these factors that in a very dicey economic environment worldwide.
Kenya also faces fierce competition from neighboring countries like Tanzania, where travelers can also enjoy the dual pleasures of going from safari to the beach, often at much lower cost. The entry fee to Tanzania's famed Serengeti is just $60 a day, compared to the $90 it costs just across the border in Kenya's Masai Mara.
It's no longer the olden days where the only destination along the East African coast is Mombasa. Now you have Zanzibar, they're also opening up Pemba, and many places are opening up, including Mozambique, down as you move down south. So these are all competition that we never used to have.
Kenya's tourism industry has been struck by the perfect storm: violence, global economic crisis, and greater regional competition. Still, operators remain hopeful that with time they can restore the country's image back to one of safaris, sundowners, and a sense of adventure.
From tourism to trade matters, the immense opportunities provided for in the Great Lakes region have got Kenya's private sector planning ahead. The sector is getting all the support from the Kenyan government and the UN, which plans to pump in $12 billion, a portion of which will be given as grants. Sam Gakunyi brings us that story.
Kenya is buckling down to enhance its trade and economic interest in the Great Lakes region, a region made of 12 countries. Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Karanja Kibicho, says commitment from the top leadership is one of the strongest indicators that the government is willing to assist investors.
See our president going, know that there is a negotiated trade agreement.
With Kenya assuming a prominent role in resolving regional conflicts and forging stronger trade ties within Africa, there is a deliberate attempt by leaders both in public and private sector to contribute to the Pan-African agenda.
Are we as Kenya, are we going to be competitive in those markets? We need, and I think this is where the ministry and everybody needs to map out really the logistics sources from here, from Kenya, all the logistics, where we are going into those markets, where is the consumption maximum, chart that out and say, fine, how do we actually serve those markets well?
Kenya's private sector is paddling their own canoe to tap into this and ensuring optimal benefits for producers, investors and the economy at large. It is becoming imperative that Kenya pitches for its share of trade and economic interest in the region. The challenges that lies therein notwithstanding, for example, a non-comprehensive infrastructure network.
We are not doing very well in terms of connectivity in our infrastructure in the Great Lakes region. In EAC probably we are much better, but some of the other countries it's very hard to access, and these are the starting point for us to address access of market.
The sector has over and over again called on the government to be duty-bound and assist in reviewing the policies, regulations and the environment for enhancing trade and economic interest in the region. But the government in return is asking for a scorecard from the sector.
Things you want to say, to tell us, we do. We are going to have a checklist. You told us to do this, we have done. what do you get us in return?
The UN and the World Bank will come in handy. They have committed $2 billion as grants in the region. According to Modibo Toure, a special advisor to the UN Special Envoy to the Great Lakes region, the beneficiaries will be private investors that will promise to eradicate youth unemployment in the region. Sam Gakunyi, Ooro Africa News, Nairobi, Kenya.
Street children are often subject to abuse and neglect. Their life on the streets a harsh existence demanding a lot of resilience. While others despise them, Ooro Africa's news reporter Olivia Ngata brings us a story of a man who has established a rehabilitation center which aims to transform street children and poor orphans by providing basic needs like food, shelter and clothing.
As the sun sets, some prepare a place to spend the night. Simple carton serves mainly as a bed on the cold pavements. For some, it's time to get to work, moving from street to street, begging for a few coins or something to put in their empty bellies. The street is not their home. It's not their refuge. The street is their life.
My children always get sick. I have to take them to hospital. Even to get food is an issue. We get our food from the garbage. We survive by the grace of God.
Every day is a struggle for survival. Wanjiko, not her real name, shares her experience with us.
So after I failed the KCPE, I couldn't continue with my studies because my mom didn't have enough money to continue. So that is how I came in street. I suffered for many years with my mom in street together. Till now we are with my mom.
Rehabilitating street children and families is not an easy task. Fred Ojambo, director of Friends Children's Center, located in Kawangware, one of the fastest growing and poorest slums in Nairobi, tells us one needs to be tactful.
Now we go out mostly on the nights. We do night outreach programs to street children. And the reason we do that is that not everyone who is on the street is in need. Some of these kids try to fake why they are on the street, to justify why they're on the street, but the truth is they are not genuinely there. But we have those genuine cases of those kids who are on the street. So the reason we go out at night, like we try to ask, when we have a group of kids and we're asking like, who normally sleeps outside, like you have any house where you're going to sleep, and they are around bonfires, and they will start pointing out like this one, this one, this one, and this one among themselves.
Meet a 13-year-old Charles. Like many of the children in this center, he has already experienced life of a street child. He started living in the streets when his parents separated. For him, this is like a little haven.
Yes, I feel fun because in street you can't play, you are sad, you are hungry, you eat dirty things, but here you bath, you eat, you sleep good, you can play with other people, you can sit with other people, you talk stories, but there no anything you can do because everybody is on his way.
Charles adds that life in the streets is not only hard but also extremely dangerous.
It was danger because if you sleep at night you can be caught with the police and then when we are got with police you are catched and put inside the jail.
Ojambo shares with us some of the challenges they faced during the rescue mission.
Well, one of the main challenges we face is, I think these kids have also been exploited in one way or another. So they know like when you're going out on the street, your motives may not be genuine. So being misjudged is a main problem we receive on the street, because some of them feel like you're coming to take their pictures and go use them for your own reasons.
Ojambo, who has a passion for working with kids, having been abandoned by his mother when he was only 6 months old, strongly believes there still remains a lot to be done to curb this problem.
If you put 100 children in one home, and you have, for example, 3 mothers, that is dangerous. In the sense that, one, you are not, these kids are coming from a very dangerous environment, a lawless kind of environment. They don't know the law. I've never seen any program where the government has announced, for example, to have all people working in a children's home undergo a training program at a county level or at a district level. I've never seen that.
Having a place they can call a home and have some basic education is all what these little ones are looking for. And as Ojambo has opened an opportunity for some, so do the rest wish such an opening could be found for them to begin a new life. Most street children struggle for the most basic form of existence, while society perceives them differently. Just imagine walking down the streets and then you came across one of your children. How would you feel, or what would you do? Reporting for Ooro Africa News, I'm Olivia Gatia.
That story brings us to the end of the Bulletin on Africa this morning. Join us next as we take a look at the leading stories on our social media platform on Trend.